beginning with the first passage. Okay, so you ready for the passage? Are you ready for the passage? Shall we start? Okay, so here it is. Once you are done reading it, let me know and we'd see. I'll move you over to the next slide. A very good afternoon, Shri. Good to see you here. Okay, Anjula has read it. Anybody else who has joined in the league? Okay, so taking you to the next paragraph in 5 seconds. And here it is, and that's all that is there. Okay, this is, so remember okay, just read it once and then I'll tell you a little more about it. Virender, I can tell you about pedantry once the others have also read it. Okay, so hopefully you guys have read it by now. So Virender has a question, pedantry. Now see, when we call somebody pedantic, the adjective form is used more often, then it is used as an insulting word. Okay, so it is a negative word. It describes somebody who annoys others by correcting even their small mistakes, small errors, or somebody who cares a bit too much about the small details. Right, or at times a person who I would say who's a person who emphasizes his own expertise in some very boring subject matter. So in this context, pedantry will be engaging in such behaviors with respect to writing history. And when it comes to the other word that you've asked for, give me a very brief while and I will talk about it. Okay, so here is the first question based on the passage. So this was a shortish passage. Until around CAT 2016, 2017, these 2 years, we actually received some passages which were smaller and they happen to have 3 questions, and we should ideally be geared up for taking on any of these. So let's go. Question number 1 on the screen. What's your take? Sri has an example like Ross in Friends. Okay, I hope you'll not disown me for this, but I haven't really watched Friends. But for those of you who have watched, perhaps the reference makes sense. I suddenly feel bad at not watching it. Should I? Okay, so Virendra has shared his answer. Anyone else who's pitching in? So let us see. A historian should be an artist even if partially. This is true. It is given at the beginning of the second paragraph. B. A historian should filter and refine the content before presenting it to the reader. The first 3-4 lines of the first paragraph. Then C. A historian should be ready to put in more effort than the minimum required from her. This is again something that we can conclude from the second half of the first paragraph. So that's true. Now D says a historian's duty is to tell stories. See, according to the paragraph, a historian, according to the author, the historian should present history as a dramatic narrative. Or in other words, he should present history as an interesting, engaging story. Does that mean that it is the historian's duty to tell stories? Because stories can also be fictional. Historian will not deal with fictional. So his duty is to tell us or share with us history in a way that it makes it exciting and engaging, and according to the author, that's going to be a dramatic story. So it does not mean stories in general. It's about presenting history as a story, and therefore D is a distortion of what the passage says. And that is why when the question asks does not support, we should go ahead and choose D as our answer. Okay. So here is your next question. What's your take? So what's your take on this one? This is a variation of idea restatement in a way. So absolutely yes, the correct answer here is C. Short letters take more effort. Yes, but then this part, writing long letters may take more time. This is contradictory. This is wrong. And therefore, we can choose C as our answer, and you guys are absolutely correct if you've chosen it. Then the next one, question number 3 on the screen. So now you know, Virender, why I did not answer the second half of your question. I wanted to ask it subsequently, and you would get to know the meaning here. So which of the following options most closely resembles the meaning of beguilement and cleave as used in the passage, and let me take you to the right place. I'm sure you can go there on your own, but let me help you with this. There you go. So it is in the first paragraph. Here are those two places. I've highlighted these words for you. Quickly read them in the context, and then I'll take you over to the question once again. Okay, so here is the question once again. Sri, yes, normally the examiner would type it in caps, but then should I do that? I mean, let's see. I think it's okay for people to make a few mistakes here in practice so that they learn to read this carefully. So what's our answer, guys? What's our answer now? So beguile, which is a normal verb, generally means to deceive, to mislead, delude. Okay, so these are the kind of meanings that we normally associate with beguile. So beguile basically means to lead somebody astray, to distract you from your path, or to frustrate people, usually by engaging in manners which are underhand, which are not right. So going by that, I'd say when it comes to beguilement, we can use distraction for it, we can use deception for it, but B and D are ruled out. So that takes us to cleave. So cleave basically means to separate or divide. Okay. Or to cause something to separate or divide. So between split and heave, which one of these two words talks about dividing? Split, right? Split means divide. And that is why our answer here should be option A. Right? Heave essentially means to lift something very heavy. That requires a lot of effort at your end. So that will not obviously have this particular meaning. So I hope that takes care of this. Here is your next question. Now the next question is a bit different. You'd usually not encounter such questions, but then I'm including it, although we are focusing a lot on the cat, but these are the kind of things that you should expect to receive in IIFT. So for somebody who's preparing for an exam like the IIFT, get ready for something along these lines. So go ahead and share the meaning. Not this question, I guess. This is another question. This is the question which will require you to have that IIFT kind of a thought process. Pratyusha, ensnarement is to trap someone. Jaal mein fasa lena. So that's ensnarement. So we normally use the verb form ensnare. Ensnare means to catch or trap someone or something. Well, maybe. Okay, so forget the options. Why was it written again. Here is the context, okay? So if you look at the first paragraph, this part was written again. Discard the irrelevant. Above all, discard the irrelevant. So we are basically saying that he is emphasizing on the fact that anything that is irrelevant needs to be removed or discarded. So if you look at A, to show that discarding the essential, it's about the non-essential. So A is definitely ruled out. C is also ruled out for the same reason, but then I guess you can rule them out only when you are aware of the meanings of these foreign expressions. Okay, so what do you understand by sine qua non? Sine qua non is sine qua non. What are you doing? Sine qua non. Sine qua non is a necessary condition. Okay, a condition without which something is not possible. So for example, I often tell it to other trainers that an interest in our students' future is a sine qua non of teaching. An interest in our children's future, our students' future, is a sine qua non of teaching. So without that interest, it is not possible for you to teach, right? So that's sine qua non. So essential, to show that discarding the essential is necessary, to show that discarding the non-essential is necessary. Between A and B, definitely B. Let's look at C. Quid pro quo. What is quid pro quo? Quid pro quo is give and take. Okay, so we have this colloquial expression in English. We say, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Or in Hindi we say, is haath de, us haath le. So basically, to do something in exchange of a favor received. So for example, in corruption cases, it is important for us to prove a quid pro quo. That you received the money and you did the task in lieu of receiving that money, right? And then you have D, to show that discarding the non-essential is pacta sunt servanda. Now pacta sunt servanda is Latin. It basically, if I translate it from Latin, it will mean agreements must be kept. Okay, so pacta sunt servanda is one of the oldest principles of international law. So without such a rule, no international agreement would be binding or enforceable. So when we say these international treaties, pacts, etc. are pacta sunt servanda, we are basically saying that every treaty in force or every law in force is binding upon the parties to it and must be performed by them in good faith. So those agreements must be kept. So I think A and C can be ruled out because of the use of the expression essential. Because what we want to remove is the non-essential, so that leaves you with B and D, and between B and D, is it an agreement that must be kept? Is it an agreement? No, it is a guiding principle, and therefore D can also be eliminated, and that will help us zero it down to B. Okay, so I hope you've learned some foreign expressions which can at times get asked in IIFT and at times even in this exam called SNAP. And here comes your last question based on this passage. Tone. Give me the tone. Done? Okay, so we have B, we have D. So let's check. So first up, what do we mean by explanatory? Explanatory is something that explains. It talks about the why, why something why did something happen, or it can also talk about the how of something. How did something happen, or how did things take place. So it talks more about processes. So can we call it explanatory? Not really. It does not explain a phenomenon. In fact, in this particular paragraph, the passage, the author actually talks about how a historian should act. Right? It's more about the how. And if I look at the other word, contemplative, contemplative basically means involving quiet and serious thought for a period of time. So in other words, contemplative will be something that can be termed as thoughtful and reflective. So contemplative is thoughtful and reflective. Now, if you look at this passage, obviously the author is thoughtful, but then you'd also notice that he is reflective. Look at the second paragraph where he's looking back at his own process of being a historian. So contemplative, maybe yes. Then you have this next word, heuristic. What is heuristic? Heuristic is a method of learning that allows people to discover things by themselves, learn from their own experience. So when you use heuristics, you don't tell, you don't share your opinions, you guide people towards solving the problems in such a way that they go on to discover those problems themselves, right? So that's how it basically works. So can I use heuristic? Definitely not. And what about philosophical? Is he being philosophical? A lot of us actually misunderstand it or misinterpret it. Philosophical actually happens to have two meanings. The first one is relating to philosophy, relating to the study of philosophy, writings of philosophy. And the other one is, so this passage obviously does not talk about philosophy. The other one is showing a calm attitude towards disappointments of life, difficulties of life. So if you are philosophical, then it basically means that you accept things calmly, without anger. With this understanding that failure and disappointment, they are all a part of life. Okay, so that's basically philosophical. So since in this passage the author is not talking about dealing with a disappointment calmly, I can rule out D. Heuristic is easy to rule out. So the best answer choice that we have here is option B. Okay, and it is not explanatory because it does not give you the answer of why or how. It tells you how, it basically tells you the way a historian should act. And here the how is the how of a process, how things are being done, or how things were done, or how things are. Here the kind of how that you would find is more of an opinion based how. So it's not explanatory. It tells you the way a historian is supposed to write and act. So the author is thoughtful, and it involves looking back at author's own past, the second paragraph. So contemplative will be a better fit. And with that, let us dive into our next passage, passage number 2 on your screen. Read this, and once you are done, let me know and I can take you over to the next slide.
Number you
Okay, so are we through? Okay, so here is the next paragraph. Hanji, so are we done? Okay, so here is the next paragraph. Herpetologists are people who study reptilians and amphibians. Okay, so they study things like snakes and frogs and lizards. They are called herpetologists. Virender, catalog is a compilation of all the things that are available at a particular place. Or here, the way it has been used here is that you make a list of all the animals of a particular variety. Done. Okay, so here is a photograph of Tuffy that died in September of 2016 for you. So this is the tiny bugger that we are really talking about, and here is your first question based on this passage, but overall question number 6. Which of the following inferences is not true? Go ahead, tell me. Virender, ark is a huge boat, but then in order to interpret it, we need to get into biblical history. Scourge is anything that devastates, anything that kills a large number of people. In some cases, it can also be used as a curse. And I will talk about that biblical part of ark in a while, so just wait. So what's your answer to this? Okay, so let's see. Tuffy was a frog. True. Scientists are certain that the amphibian life in central Panama would disappear. Can't say. Now, why am I labeling it can't say? Why am I labeling it can't say? Let me take you back to a part of the passage. See this. They were desperately trying to catalog the amphibian life in central Panama before it disappeared. But then look at what is happening here, wiping out frogs and toads. Right? Wiping out frogs and toads. So, are they certain? They were preparing for the worst. And what was it based on? That they say there is one part where frogs and toads have disappeared from. So there is a very high probability that they may disappear from the other place. So they were acting out of that probability. They were not certain. Moreover, what got eliminated? Frogs and toads. Does that mean that all the amphibian life disappeared? Okay, C. Scientists were unable to find more frogs of Rabb's fringe-limbed tree frog species. True. They tried. Third paragraph. D. Skin of other frogs of the species. Yes. This is in fact mentioned in the first paragraph. Literally eating the skin of their father's back, and their father obviously had to be a frog, and therefore D is also true. So A, C and D are definitely true. B is probably true. It is not something that is 100%. So scientists are certain, we don't know that. Some scientists who were there, they felt that there is a very high probability of that happening. That is why they were collecting samples. And that is what makes B the best answer choice here. Very tricky question. Touch and go, but then that's how it really works at times, right? Here is the next one for you. Which of the following is an appropriate meaning of the phrase a sort of arc as used in the passage? So in order to understand this, since Virender asked this question a little while ago, there is a very famous biblical story of Noah's Ark where God told Noah that it is going to rain, the entire world will submerge, and then 7 days later everything will start afresh. So he built a sort of huge boat where he carried a pair of every species. Okay, so it was sort of a refuge where he tried to save as many species as he could. So he carried a pair of every species that he could. So when you say a sort of ark, you're basically saying that they tried to save as many of those species by keeping a pair of them as possible. So will it be a zoo? Zoo is meant for the leisure of pleasure of the people. So it's not a zoo. A bent enclosure doesn't make much sense for the still extant animals. I don't know. Why would you call it a bent enclosure? But a sanctuary, yes. A safe space, yes, for those animals that still survive. So this is going to be closest to the meaning and therefore the answer should be C. Sri has a question. Okay, then Pratyush says, but it is written that they are known. Pratyusha, in the context, if you interpret, see, that is why I used, that is why I said B is probably true. They wanted to save it before they went extinct. It basically shows that they felt that the species may become extinct. That's point number one. Point number two, if we are calling B true, we still have to mark one answer choice as the best one. Okay. A, C and D are definitely true. There is no issue of interpretation whatsoever. I can point out some more subtle things as well. You're saying scientists are certain. You realize this is present, whereas what happened was in the past. So there was some point of time in the past where some scientists felt, versus scientists today feel that the amphibian life in central Panama would disappear. So you notice there are quite a bit of differences there. But how can D be generic to its species? Look at what they say. They say they are known for eating the skin of other frogs. So we know that they do eat. And in fact, if you are asking me how we can generalize it, I can give you a sentence. So see this, up in the tree hole, there wasn't much for the tadpoles to eat. So they sustained themselves by doing it. And if that is where these tadpoles take birth from, chances are that in that case, every tadpole is doing it anyway. Right? So that is where we can go ahead and arrive at D from. And even if it is only for Tuffy's family, they are known for. They can do that, right? So not every member has to do that anyway. Okay, coming back to, sorry, I saw these messages a little late, but 7th should be C. Pratyusha, they ate the skin of their father. So father obviously had to be the same species, no? Okay, we can take these up, take these questions up later. We may have another session at 1 year. I did not check the schedule, so I need to free it before that. So question number 8, the first paragraph is a fine example of which of the following. So in order to answer this question, you obviously need to read the first paragraph. So let me share that with you. So here is the first paragraph. What do you think this can be an example of? Right? So here is the question once again. So what do you think? What should we call it? Narrative introduction, personal memories, chronology, emotional introduction. Okay, so narrative introduction. See, this is the first paragraph. So introduction, yes, narrative is something that is in the form of a story. So is it in the form of a story? So look at, you're talking about birth, where it was born, how it survived, how it was found in 2005. So very clearly narrative. Now when you say personal memories, look at the third line. I never had the pleasure of meeting him. This cannot be a personal memory. This has to be something that he has gleaned from others. So B is very easy for us to rule out. Was there any chronology involved? Timeline? Except for 2005, there is no timeline present here. Okay? And therefore C can also be ruled out. And between A and D, D is emotional, where you read it and you like on the verge of tears. Oh, where you're deeply touched, where all he's saying is a frog was born to a particular family, and then eventually this is how he survived, this is how he was found. So it is basically in the form of a story. There is a storyline to it. Yeah, and therefore A should be preferred over D. Emotional introduction is where you focus a lot on the struggles and the challenges. There is only one line that talks about that challenge, that they did not have much to eat there, so they had to survive by literally eating the skin of their father. But even there, it was not elaborated upon to touch our heart. Right? So we have to get into those subtle shades, and that is why A should be preferred over D. And here is the 9th question. What's your answer? Which of the following is the most appropriate title of the passage? Sort of a main idea question, but let's see. Okay. See, that is something that you can do through a story as well, but it was definitely not personal, going by the third line. See, okay, so this paragraph is talking about the tragedy of a species becoming extinct. So B talks about only Tuffy, can be ruled out. D talks about only Tuffy, can be ruled out. It has to be A versus C, because the idea once again is about the species, not a particular member. So C talks about ecological disaster and a frog's life, which is once again restricting it to an individual frog. But then A says a frog dies in Atlanta and a world vanishes with it. Now this latter part, a world vanishes with it, talks about the extinction of the species. This can still fit in and address that particular theme. As B, C and D make it specific to an individual frog. In the case of B and D, only Tuffy. In the case of C, they have not mentioned Tuffy, but it is still talking about just Tuffy. But A has the second half that presents the disaster that has happened for the entire species. So when you say a world, you know, every species has a unique point of view of looking at something, right? When that species goes away, then at least that point of view has forever been erased from the planet. So that is why the best answer choice should be option A. And with that, let's pick up the next question. The passage could probably be an excerpt from. Where is it taken from? हाँ, आज गलतियां थोड़ी ज्यादा हो रही है ना, चैलेंजिंग हो रहा है ना काम. हाँ. आरसी में यही होता है यार, पेपर कई बार दे करके आओ एंड यूर लाइक क्या था ये, है ना. हाँ, सानू चन्न माइया तेरे पैसे जाने मारिया. हाँ. Okay, so here it is easy to rule out A because the author himself did not meet it, so it cannot be a part of his memoir, right? And abstract is a summary. The passage is not a summary, so D can also be ruled out. So that leaves you with B and C. When you talk about a scientific journal, journals are technical papers. Journals are technical publications which are meant for the other scientists. And a journal article is going to be heavily loaded by facts, hypotheses, experiments, proofs, pointing holes in some study or the other. This was not heavy on facts. It used a very narrative, easy to understand structure. It was written for a lay person, and therefore even B can be ruled out, and we should go ahead and choose C. In fact, even the source, this passage is taken from New Yorker, which is meant for a lay person, right? And therefore is not a scientific journal, can be ruled out. Okay, so that's about the two passages that I had brought for you. And once again, a thought that I want to a thought that I want you to keep in your mind. The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. So please believe in yourself. Please continue working. And if you like the session, if you find